Our reading from Rays of the One Light, weekly commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. Week 4, the Infinite Christ. Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. The Gospel of St. John contains some of the most profound spiritual teachings in the Bible. In the first chapter, many subtle truths are suggested concerning higher stages of self-realization. Here, John the Baptist is described as one reaching up toward that high state. He was not that light, the Gospel tells us, but was sent to bear witness of that light. Jesus Christ, by contrast, is described as the light itself. That was the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. He was in the world, and the world was made by him, and the world knew him not. One essential truth stands out in this teaching: that Jesus came not to dogmatize people with a new teaching, but to bring them timeless, universal truths. Disciples saw the Master clothed in human form and therefore judged him in terms of his greatness relative to the greatness of other teachers. Wisdom, however, sees the Master's very greatness in terms of a cosmic unity. There is a passage in The Path by Swami Ananda in which this point is emphasized. The Master, Paramhansa Yogananda, explained, "The saint who attains that exalted consciousness never says, 'I am God,' for he sees it was the vast ocean that became his little wave of ego. The wave, in other words, would not claim, when referring to the little self, to be the ocean." At this junction, Debbie, who was present, cried excitedly,
"But sir, if you are one with that ocean, that means you are God."
"Why I?" Master asked. "Say he is God."
"But still, sir, you are one with him, and he is the only reality. That means you too are God."
"But this body isn't God."
"You aren't identified with your body, sir, so one may still say that you are God."
"Well, in that case, why do you say you? You too are that." In a discussion of this sort, it is less confusing if we say he.
"But what's the difference?"
"The scriptures say," Master began.
"It's only your humility, sir,
Debbie broke in.
that makes you distinguish between yourself and him."
"How can there be humility when there is no consciousness of ego?" Triumphantly, Debbie cried.
"But if you have no ego left, that means you are God."
Master laughingly continued the earlier statement which Debbie had interrupted. "The scriptures say, 'He who knows Brahma becomes Brahman.'"
"There,
cried Debbie.
you are yourself. You said it yourself."
Master rejoined, still laughingly, "I didn't say it, it's the scriptures that say so." Master, in other words, would not identify those words with the human body speaking them. It was in his overarching spirit that he saw himself one with the infinite. But Debbie was unable to make this mental leap from a pure expression of infinity to infinity itself.
"You quoted those scriptures, sir.
He reminded the Master relentlessly.
That means you agree with them."
Recognizing that the distinction was perhaps too subtle for many to grasp, Master concluded, "Well, he who says he is God isn't God. And," he added with a smile, "he who says he isn't." And there the subject rested among general laughter. The greater a spiritual teaching, the more greatly we betray it by particularizing it with dogmas. Truth itself, not the Christian truth or the Hindu truth, incarnates on earth with the birth of a fully liberated Master. As the Bhagavad Gita teaches in the 4th chapter, "Unborn, changeless, Lord of creation and controller of my cosmic nature, though I am, Yet entering nature, I am dressed in the cosmic garment of my own Maya delusion. O Bharata, whenever virtue declines and vice predominates, I incarnate on earth. Taking visible form, I come to destroy evil and re-establish virtue. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om.
Begin with whispers from eternity as we explore together the infinite Christ. This is 204. It's a prayer demand to reach the one highway of self-realization. Flower of all fragrances, awaken our senses. Lead us not through forests of uncertainty, where many bypaths lead off in diverse directions, twisting and turning, though as it were hopefully past endless obstacles to thy city of light. Take us out quickly into the inner highway of realization, the spine which leads directly to thee. O thou unfailing beacon of light, send thy illuminating ray into the darkness of our ignorance. Show us the right way, and let us not be sidetracked by mere beliefs and dogmas. Help us to experience thee. No matter what our bypath of formal worship, guide us at last onto the highway of common soul intuition, the highway of self-realization, which leads us direct perception of thee. Soaring high above narrow lanes of bigotry and lightly over unyielding walls of religious prejudice, lift our souls safely up into the free skies of bliss, and let us meet together joyfully in thy unwalled temple of universal worship. There shall we raise chants of devotion to thy omnipresence, our hymns made sacred by the simple, direct sincerity of our hearts. Teach us to seek thee in painful, careful, scientific attention first to what actually lifts our consciousness, practical techniques of salvation that open our consciousness to experience thee. O beacon of cosmic light, send thy guiding ray of divine understanding into the darkness of our ignorance, that our soaring consciousness may land safely, incarnation after incarnation, on terrain conductive of continued thoughts of thee.
Just a moment. Your mic is not working, Kellyji.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Kelly. We couldn't hear anything that you're saying. Maybe you could read it again.
Okay, bear with us for just a moment. We're going to switch our mics out here. Sorry for the sound delay. And please let us know if this works right away.
The infinite Christ. This reading contains profound spiritual teachings and the truths about the higher stages of self-realization. In the reading that Shannon and Dave gave us, we hear that the John the Baptist is reaching towards this higher state. But John was not that light, but he was sent to bear witness to that light. But Jesus is described as the light itself. That was the true light which lighteth even every man that cometh into the world, says the Bible. This teaching is about us finding our way onto the path and taking the steps to self-realization to find our home back to God. So how do we become this light? This profound question. How do we progress on the spiritual path to bear witness to that light as John the Baptist did, but then to become the light like Jesus, to become the omnipresent. Yogananda describes self-realization as the knowing in our mind, body, and soul that we are that omnipresence, that all presence. And all we need to do is improve our knowing. At Ananda, they talk about the 5 steps to self-realization. The first step is self-righteousness. The second, self-honesty, self-acceptance, self-forgetfulness, and then the ultimate goal of self-realization. This is not linear steps because we all find ourselves when we're tested or going through losses, that we find ourselves maybe moving back, but we spend less and less time in the beginning stages and more time in the stages of the redeeming light. So self-righteousness is the first step to self-realization. But first, we have to have had an awakening. And that is the most profound, blessed gift that we can ever receive. It is so precious that our gurus, that the teachers, that Divine Mother and God deemed us ready to begin our spiritual awakening and search, to release the hold that ego has on us, and let us to begin to find that light, to make it a goal, to know that the darkness is not who we are. What we thought was darkness was but light, says the Festival of Light. So Naya Swami Devi says that the first step as we begin our journey, we are kind of full of ourselves. We're like, oh my God, I just meditated 5 hours, I am amazing yogi, and all these wonderful things that, are coming to us, but our ego takes over, that trickster, and it begins to think, I'm a little better than other people, I'm different, I'm more than. And this attitude is about separation, right? That's what the ego does. It tries to take anything that we come to and separate it instead of that unity, right? We've been talking so much about unity. Jesus was the great yogi, this unity, but separateness has to be seen first. And in self-righteousness, that tricky ego competes and compares, complains, but true spiritual growth is about this kinship, this working together, and necessary for all community to be able to be successful, for people to rise above, this self-righteousness into the next step, which is really self-honesty. And when we remember that all people are part of ourself, we begin to really take ownership for everything that comes into our life. Swami Kriyananda talks so much about self-honesty, and that as we progress to self-honesty, Yogananda said, we analyze ourselves daily. We see that we have a lot of work to do on ourselves, and we do it. We want it. We're willing to. Bring it on, Lord. Bring me the tests. Bring me the experiences that are going to make me stronger, that are going to make me progress towards thee. And we meet our tough tests with complete 100% ownership. We realize our ego has misled us, and our problems are not outside of ourselves, but inside. And it's time that we start to move past that, right? That blame, that be lame game that we can play, that our ego takes us over. What we see in the world is always a reflection of us. The Buddha was asked, what did you gain from meditation? And he said, nothing. But I lost a lot. I lost my desires. I lost buying into the delusion, the ego attachments, and I lost my fear. And that's what this self-honesty about. It's a process of elimination. It's a process of letting go of our false self and stepping truly into who we are. And the next step, which is stage 3, and we can always gauge ourselves, where we are in our life. Maybe we say, well, how can I take this next step if I feel stuck in a situation in my life, or, a vocation or anything that's happening? How can I take this next step? This radical self-acceptance is the most important step, Swami said, because it is the secret of inner peace, right? If we have that conflict within us, we can't hold peace in our hearts. It's not, Swami really made this clear, it's not that we just accept our false self,
like, well, I'm pretty lazy, so I'll just accept it and hang out more, you know? That's not how it goes. Self-acceptance is really about seeing what's inside of us and loving it. It's really going into our emotions, our feelings, and really integrating them, having the courage to, the ego is all about resistance, to move past the resistance and go down to the very root of things, the very heart of the matter. When I was looking at this quality within myself of self-acceptance, I remembered that this week, you know, I'm in a process with a naturopath to heal a Lyme disease that I caught and to get free of the symptoms. And she has us on a detox, and there's no sugar and caffeine and dairy and gluten, and it's a process of, you know, eliminating all the toxins in the body. But there's also emotional toxins from the air, from what we drink, from our foods, from allergies in our foods, and I'm really learning a lot about this. But it seemed one night that I was releasing through my feet, which I hear are a place where you know, we can take on some of that energy. And I had such excruciating pain, and I just, Divine Mother, thou art omnipresent, thou art within me, manifest thy healing presence. With all my heart, I prayed to her to ask her for help in this. It was really, really excruciating. And I was just feeling helpless about it. Like I couldn't find a way through it. And in a moment, I felt this amazing divine hand just come to my foot. And in a moment, I felt this exuberation as this pain was just freed. There was no pain there. And after a few moments, I could feel that the pain started to rise a little bit back. The hand was released, and I could feel little at moments the pain coming back. And I realized that pain was for me to go into, that my job was to feel it, to go into it, to let go of the resistance. And as it slowly came back, I relaxed the resistance. I felt the support of Divine Mother to feel and breathe into the sensations, to transmute them. And I saw that I really needed to accept and not resist. And that Divine Mother was healing me through this and teaching me all about acceptance through this experience. And so the fourth stage is self-forgetfulness. And this is what really leads us to inner freedom. It's about humility. It's about service. It's about nishkan kama, where we serve without any fruits, any desires. Self-forgetfulness leads to inner freedom. We begin to attune to the beauty of nature, God's love, and we really begin to live in appreciation. You know, as I walked the beach this morning and sat and really felt that light, I could feel myself going inward and feeling, thinking about what I was going to talk about today. And then something would happen, just open up to feel that beautiful light of the sunshine and to let it, you know, take over my consciousness and expand me outward into the beauty of the world, and to begin to really start looking at that. Krishna Das tells a beautiful story of Neem Karoli Baba, where they were at the ashram and a new devotee came, and the devotee asked, "How do we meditate?" And Neem Karoli Baba replied, "Meditate like Jesus." And he went away and he talked to Krishna Das and Ram Das came back and said, "How, Baba? How do we do that?" And a tear came down his cheek, and he said, "You get lost in the love." There's a beautiful story of a king of India, and he had 3 questions. What's the most important time, the most important person, and the most important thing to do? And he called all the ministers from all around the land to ask them to help him to answer this question. And they said, "You, sir, are the most important. When you were born was the most important time." And he said, "No, no, no." He knew they were feeding his ego. So he went on a journey to the great sage that lived on top of the mountain. And as he reached that mountain, he asked the soldiers to stay back, and he climbed that mountain all by himself. And in the cave, he found the sage meditating deeply. He realized he didn't want to interrupt the sage and would stay the night. The next morning, he woke up to this incredible light. He was able to see the light, see a divine perspective. And as they walked to the edge of the cave, he looked out at this glorious kingdom of his, illuminated by the divine light. And he understood that his job was service, nishkam karma. His job was to give without any thought of getting, to open his heart and mind to the needs and to support of all the others. And as the sage approached him, he realized the man had enlightened. He had moved out of that state of restriction into expansiveness. And together they saw the answers, that the time is now, and that the person is the person that you're with that's most important. And the most important thing to do is to be in God's light. Stage 5 is self-realization. You know, the Dalai Lama had said, "My religion is kindness, no dogmas." We are free from dogmas, egos, and attachment as we move through these processes and into the most divine of them all, the last stage, which is called self-realization. Paramhansa Yogananda said, "When this I shall die, then I know who I am." The devotee in the story that Shannon and Dave couldn't understand, couldn't fathom the infinite Christ. It's beyond us. Ramakrishna, when he began to talk about the stages of self-realization and came toward the end stages, he just became silent, because the essence of the teachings can't really be understood through words. It's a much higher, it's an experience, it's an expansion into that light. You know, we can ask ourselves, what would Master do? And when we meditate, go inside and just a simple prayer, "I love you, God," opens our heart, continuing to open ourselves over and over into that light, as if we're captains of a ship and we keep steering ourselves on course to that cosmic, amazing freedom, that light that is always there. And we get off course, but we recenter ourselves. And ultimately, we see that light, we hold that light, and then we merge back into that ocean of bliss. Self-realization is earned, and we are destined to live in that infinite Christ, to be the light, to be that infinite ocean of bliss. This reading today is about expansion. And each January, in the beginning of the year, we can look into ourselves and discover our spiritual progress. We transmute our ego, we transform our ego and become the truth. And that is self-realization.